obsessed by listening to Desert Island Discs. I think that is one of the BBC's greatest performances. It's been running for many, many years now with many presenters, but there is no better way to get an insight into somebody's love of music and how that love of music relates to their love of life than listening to Desert Island Discs. So that is the podcast that I would recommend to any of your followers.
My absolute constant that I really love is the BBC podcast Inner Time, which Melvin Bragg has been presenting for years and constantly rewards listening. So that's my favourite, I suppose.
I suppose one of the ones that I have looked at is Medieval History as a podcast, which is quite interesting because it spans a big, huge part of our history, not just like around Europe, but beyond, and it's very interesting seeing how it all knits together and that. So yeah, that keeps me away from the finance world. That's what I like to study and have an interest in.
So I'm a fan of psychology, and I recently been recommended a book that talks about hardwiring our brain for happiness. I thought that was very interesting. It's perhaps relevant to some of us in the investment profession, where we always look for the downside protection, right? Like what could go wrong? And this book was talking about how really that's how our brains are wired, and but we can teach ourselves to focus on the positives. I think that was a very interesting book. I think it's called Hardwiring Your Brain for Happiness.
I just recently read a book called Trillions by Robin Wigglesworth, who's an FT columnist. And there have been quite a lot of podcasts related to his book. And actually Bloomberg do a series called Trillions as well. So based on index investing within public markets and the growth of index investing. So I would highly recommend the book to anyone who hasn't read the book, and anything that sort of he's doing is very informative, and will also give the idea as to what we're trying to accomplish within the private market space.
So I am reading a book called Noise, which is about decision making and the challenges to actually understanding when you are making decisions how much noise bias is actually involved in that action, and then multiplying that across an organization, across a government body, etc., to really try and put some science and quantitative analysis behind the art of decision making. Fascinating book, recommend it.
I'm a big believer in reading things on behavioral economics. I'm recently rereading a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. It's about decision making, written by Daniel Kahneman. Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky won the Nobel Prize for the Memorial Prize for Economics about a decade ago. It's a great book if you really want to think about decision making and how we are essentially lazy decision makers, and how we engage in, they really challenged the thought of sort of the rational economic actor. And so I think that's a great book. And then maybe a little bit on the lighter side, I recommend the following book to pretty much everybody. It's a book called The City of Thieves, and it's really a great book set in the time of the Second World War, when really two young kids go in search of a dozen eggs, which is essentially their potential ticket to freedom after having been captured. So two great books, very, very different ends of the spectrum.